So when you are designing a system, so it can be a backend system or a front-end system or something else. So what is front-end system design?
Hello and welcome everyone. Hope you're keeping well and staying safe. This is Hafsan and I am working as a community executive at Recro, wherein we are working towards building an exclusive community for developers to help you get connected with like-minded people, build your network, and grow professionally. So those who don't know about what Recro is, it is a developer-focused platform helping developers to meet the right opportunity by connecting them with fast-growing startups such as CureFit, Udan, Swiggy, Dunzo, etc. So welcome to Recro Talks again, and today we are doing a webinar on what the hell is front-end system design about? Our guest speaker for today is Kiran Kumar. He's a passionate developer and he has 6+ years of working experience with front-end technologies. He's currently working as a front-end engineer too at Atlassian. He has equal passion teaching and mentoring. He delivered 10+ meetup talks and taught 1,000+ people on various front-end technologies. He's also active on open source contributor, having made contributions to React.js, Redux, and Gatsby, and other prominent libraries. Thank you so much, Kiran, for joining us. You may go ahead and say hi to the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Apsa, for the intro. And hi, everyone. Yeah.
And we do have people joining in from LinkedIn Live. And one last announcement, guys. So we have 70+ people joining in from LinkedIn Live. So please make sure that you are posting your questions. I'll make sure that I'm going to read all the questions in the comments, and I'll make sure that I'll be taking up to the speaker maybe in the middle of the webinar or at the end of the Q&A segment. Also, I'll be sharing out the polls in between, so please make sure to answer them and keep your notepad handy so that you'll not miss over the learnings of this webinar. And we'd love to see your learnings posted on your LinkedIn account. So yeah, I think we can get started. Yeah.
Yep.
Let me know if you can share your screen.
I think you need to enable that for me.
Yep. Yeah, I did.
Yep. Thank you. And I hope you are able to see my screen.
Yep, you're able to see your screen.
Okay, great. So yeah, I welcome everyone to today's talk on what the hell is front-end system design. Yeah, it's a pretty catchy title, but I'll make sure that you know what the hell is front-end system design at the end of the talk. Who am I? So thanks, Hafsa, for the great intro. I'll just give a glimpse. I'm Kiran Kumar Ambati. I'm working as a front-end engineer for past 6 years, and currently I'm with Atlassian, working as a front-end engineer too. And if you want to ever reach out to me, then just kirankumarambati.me and you'll find me there. That's my home. And let's get to the business. So what is system design? So first of all, if you see the word system design, if you think about that word system design, so that means you are trying to design a system as per some of the requirements given. So this is a definition which I found on Google. And if you read this, systems design is the process of defining elements of a system like modules, architecture, components, and their interfaces, and data for a system based on the specific requirements. So if you keenly observe, it is a process of defining some elements of a system. So that system can be anything. We'll see one particular system at the end. So any system, the way we define the elements like a module and how we architecture them and how we think it in terms of components, and then the interfaces we need to build for that, and the kind of data we need for that particular system based on the given specified requirements. So that is what system design is. So in a nutshell, I would say you are given a task of designing some system. So you are going to think of what exactly you need to put in that system, how you are going to put that, and what are the kind of tech choices you would make. And all that stuff will come into this called as system design. And particularly what is front-end system design. So when we listen about system design, so it's a vast thing. So when you are designing a system, so it can be a back-end system or a front-end system or something else. So what is front-end system design? So it is mainly designing the complex architecture or the components or the kind of data that will be consumed on the front end. So when you're trying to build a system, something like Facebook news feed, which we are going to see later at later point of time. So if you're trying to build a Facebook news feed, for example, in that, so you need to do a lot of thinking. You cannot just go and build a Facebook feed. Instead, you need to see what kind of components you need, what kind of data you need, and what kind of things you are, or the requirements you are going to put, whether you need to have a like button, comment, share, or repost, what kind of things you are thinking at. So all those happens on the client side. That means the user is going to see that. So that is what front-end system design is. And how exactly front-end system design is different from back-end system design. So when, as I mentioned earlier, whenever we think of system design, the first thing that comes to mind for most of the people is back-end system design. So when we say system design, it's like, okay, what kind of database should I use? What kind of API should I create? Or what kind of server should I have? How it would be more scalable? So people used to generally think in terms of backend, but in the recent days, at least from last 3 to 4 years, front-end system design has been a boom, and people actually started concentrating on that. So why exactly this thing happened? Why exactly this thing happened, and why exactly we are talking it of now rather than before? Because uh, if you know some frameworks like Gatsby or Next.js, prior to that, if you are designing a website, it's very much pretty plain website wherein you are going to, you have frameworks like React, but there is no much there is no concept like server-side rendering. So at that phase, it was mostly client-side rendering, and we were not having much complex architecture on the front end side. It used to be only like consume the data, then put it on the front end using JS, and just style it using HTML and CSS, and boom, you have a website ready. But after introduction of Gatsby and then came the Next.js, people started thinking more in terms of, okay, should I render this on the client side, or should I do it on the server side and just pass it on to client? Or should I do both? Like, should I do something on client side, something on the server side? And should I hydrate that so that my website will be faster? So there are a lot of design choices you have to make. Something like, if your website is static, kind of a blog, so it makes sense to have SSR. But if it is with a lot of dynamic data, it makes more sense to have client side. And if it is a mixture, then it makes sense to have hydration, where you have client side rendering, which is fast, and also you have uh, server side rendering, and you hydrate the stuff onto the front end. So these kind of design choices came into existence after this multiple choices showed up for the front end side. Okay. So we have seen what is a system design. We have seen what is a front-end system design and how exactly it's different from back-end system design. And we also saw why exactly we are talking it now more than ever before. So we'll see what exactly is a front-end system design. Then we'll try to dig deeper into each one. And also we will talk about how if you are presented with a question for front-end system design in an interview, how exactly we need to take it up. So we'll see all of them one by one. So first of all, if someone asks you what is a system design on front end side, so it's broadly categorized into two parts. One, high level design, and second, low level design. So what I mean by high level design is, it's a 10,000 feet level of viewing the architecture and then getting into deeper things, something like what kind of requirements you are trying to introduce into the system. And requirements again broadly divided into two types. One is functional, non-functional. Functional is primarily about the functionalities that user requires. So for example, if you're building a Facebook news feed, so you need to have a ability or a feature to post. or like or comment or share. So those are something which you expect from the system. So those are functional. And non-functional is something which you don't explicitly present to user, but it's again essential. Something like performance, how speed or how fast your website loads, or how accessible is your website, whether people from different categories or different physically challenged can use your systems or not, or how secure are your systems. One second. So those kind of things comes under non-functional. So they are still essential, but they are not the features that are going to be a part of system. So those are additional features that won't be directly presented, but they are essential for the user to be there on your website, and uh, they enable the user to have a smoother use when they're trying to use your application. And coming to scoping is so this in terms of an interview, or whenever you're trying to build a product, so you need to scope it. So for example, if you take the same example, Facebook newsfeed, so you can put ton of things there. So something like you can have maybe something like ads, or something like a digest where you are trying to put more posts from other users, or something else, something like you are trying to introduce reels, or yes, something else, the communities or groups or pages. So there are a lot of features that can be there, but you cannot do all of them at a time. So the first target should be a MVP, where you are trying to build a minimum valuable product which is required for the users to get started. Then you are going to introduce. So that is where scoping comes in. You have 10 features, but you cannot build all 10 features at a time, because it can be due to lack of team, or lack of priority. Like you need to focus on something before you get to other parts. So that is where scoping comes in. And then tech choices. So why exactly we need tech choices is, as I was speaking earlier, so whether your news feed should be client side rendered or server side, or you're going to serve it using REST API or GraphQL. Why should you use REST over GraphQL, or GraphQL over REST, or some other protocol? Or whether you're trying to uh, build the UI with Angular, React, Vue, or something else, or you're trying to go with just plain vanilla JS, or you want to dabble around Next.js. Well, those kind of all things comes under tech choices. And then, so once you have this structure ready, like the requirements ready, you scoped it, and you know exactly what features you need to implement. And then uh, the tech choices you have made. So that is when you think of like what kind of components you need. So should I have a post as a component, or can I break it into very smaller ones? Like button can be a separate component, or share, or comment, or how would my post look like? Does it have only text, or images, or videos, or it's a combination, or can I share links? And also, can I reuse some components? Like for example, you extract a like. So can you also put like somewhere else? Like instead of post, can you also like a comment? If yes, then you need to separate that like component and put it everywhere where you want to have that like button enabled. So those kind of things comes under component architecture. So once you have components ready, and while you are even discussing about components, you need to also take care of something called as state and props. Like what exactly uh, the component has with it, and what exactly the component receives from its parent. So something like, uh, for example, you have a like button as a separate component. So do you want to send the comment ID with that, or post ID, or how exactly that like button uh, resembles what post you are trying to like? So those kind of things comes under component architecture. And once you have that, you should also think about, okay, so now you are trying to build a post component. What kind of data it takes? So does your post have user with it? How many does it have the count of likes, or count of comments, or yeah, do you also get the comments all the comments as a array of comments, or does it have images, does it have other text? So those kind of things come under data model. So once you have data model, you need to see what kind of APIs you need. So are you trying to go with REST API? If yes, then what kind of endpoints you need? Like slash posts brings all the posts, post slash one. So are you trying to get only details for that one post? And are you trying to get comments separately? So something like that. And multiple protocols, how you get the data, something like REST or GraphQL. Sorry, my throat is bad. Okay, so once you have this HLD ready, so by this, you didn't code anything, but you have a solid picture that how exactly your application is going to be like. Like with this thinking, if you did a brainstorming on this, you already have a system, you know what kind of features you're looking at, and you also know what kind of non-functional requirements you're looking at. You know what exactly you have to do for the first sprint or the initial phase for the MVP, and you know the kind of tech choices you made, the components you're trying, you're at least the vague picture of what kind of components you're going to see, and you have a data contract with your backend saying, okay, I need data for this. These are the things I'm expecting from my data model or the data API, and accordingly you can sync up with your backend and see what kind of data you need, how they can work on that. And the rest of the part on the backend side, what kind of DB they have to use and how they are going to send, what kind of data they are going to send. So those will be taken care by the backend again. So this is what HLD is. Now coming to LLD. LLD is primarily a subset of HLD, wherein LLD. So if someone asks you in an interview to design something, and if it is a LLD question, so you are going to code it. So when I say that, the best example could be a auto suggestions. So what you see in Google, right? When you type something, you see a set of suggestions. So that component, so it's a very small part of a big system, and that can come under LLD. So in LLD, you will see, okay, what kind of tech choices you need. For example, someone asked you to build a auto suggestions, then you need to make a tech choice whether you are going to go with a framework. If it is a framework, then you have multiple frameworks. You are going to go with Angular, React, or Vue. So if it is only vanilla JS, so again you have to make a choice. Why exactly you need a vanilla choice, vanilla JS, and why not some other framework? And how is it is going to be? And again, you need to think about the component structure. So are you trying to make this input into a separate component, the suggestions into a separate component? And does that suggestions will have a component called suggestion, which is going to take or which is going to render each suggestion? And data model, obviously you need to see what kind of data you're going to get. But just remember, if in an interview, if someone asks you to design a system, design a bigger system, so that is going to be a HLD. But if someone is going to design, if someone asks you to design a part, something like auto suggestion or something, so that is primarily comes under LLD. And LLD is something where you are expected to code. So you are expected to show some output. Yeah, so I would like to take a pause here because the pretty much theoretical part is done. So I'd like to take a pause here, and if you have any questions, I'll take it up.
So, Kiran, we have one question from Amit, and he asked, does front-end system design only for HLD or is it also for LLD?
Okay, good question. So I kind of covered it here in my slide. So LLD is a part of HLD. So HLD is where you are trying to see one complete picture, and in that LLD is a part of that picture. And as I mentioned, LLD is primarily focused on one particular component. It's not like you are going to design complete Google. It's only one part of Google, something like suggestions. So you are going to take suggestions. So someone is going to type it and you're going to show some suggestions. And inside LLD, one thing you need to keep in mind is, as I mentioned, you need to code it. So at that time, you need to also think of a lot of other granular things which you need to keep in mind. Something like if you're doing auto suggestions, then you need to also think of something like debouncing, because that comes hand in hand. If you are designing something like auto suggestions, you cannot return the results or the suggestions for every click of user. So you need to do something like a debouncing. And yeah, there are a lot of minute things based on the component we are trying to design. So that comes up, and that we need to be aware of. Something like you can also have infinite scroll. So all those comes up, and you need to be able to code in a LLD. You need to be able to code, and HLD it's more of a discussion. So to answer Amit's question, does front end system design only for HLD, or is it also for LLD? It's for both. So if you know front end system design, it makes it a bit easier for you to do even LLD. Yeah, so Amit have one more question in chat. What are the other concepts like debounce that we should need to know? Yeah, it's also a good question. So it depends on the type of component you're asked to design for. As I mentioned, auto suggestions, you have to debounce. If you're trying to do something like a draw.io or something which you do to design stuff, then I think you need to do something like throttling and listen to the events, the browser adjust events. Or if you're trying to do something like a Instagram or Facebook feed, then definitely you need to think of, okay, should I do it an infinite scroll, or should I introduce something like load more or a pagination? So you need to know concepts like infinite scroll. Uh, so yeah, it's just that you need to keep practicing these concepts so that you'll make yourself comfortable with concepts like this. So it again, it's a broad thing, but it depends on the kind of component you are being asked to design. So based on that, so for example, if you want to do something like a Jira, for example, so you need to know drag and drop. So at that time, you need to be aware of drag APIs you have in HTML5, or do you know some libraries or something how you can use there, or how this drag API works, right? So those kind of things you need to be aware, but it comes with the practice. Like the more you practice, the more kind of scenarios or the components you face. So the more exposure you get in terms of what you are trying to achieve in that components. Yep.
Yeah. So we have one more question on LinkedIn, and it's asked, what is best, Angular or React? Is it related to front-end system design as such?
uh, uh, it's yes and no. Like it's one part of front-end system design. But yeah, framework is a choice, right? It's a very opinionated discussion actually. So Angular and React, it's very tough to say one is greater over the other. So something like if you want to have more control over the application, and if you want to have uh, one way of data binding, and you are ready to take the pain of handling the uh, setting up your state and something like that, React is a choice. But if you want to have a very strict framework, because React is not a framework, React is a library which you can plug and play. Framework is something which comes with a set of rules. So for example, Angular you can write only in some way. You cannot just plug and play that into different framework, different things. And again, it handles two-way kind of binding your data. So yeah, it's more of a opinionated question wherein it's the team has to decide whether they have to go with Angular and React. And it one more thing which comes to my mind is it also depends on the uh, team's experience or team's expertise, right? Like if your team is good in React, there's no point in you choosing Angular and having that head start or having that resistance. Instead, yeah, I would personally prefer to choose React if my team is already familiar with React. But yeah, it's very opinionated. I can be wrong in this, but yeah.
Yeah. So someone is asking, are we getting the recording of the session? Yes, we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. So we'll actually have the recording of the session after the session too. Until then, in few days we'll be recording the whole session, and we'll edit that and post that on YouTube. Up till then, you'll have the recording already on YouTube or LinkedIn. So yeah, you can just go ahead and rewatch it if you miss something. And one more question, Kiran. So
Mm.
it says how one can be aware of scope and scales of the problem. So how important is that, and how could one be aware of it?
Sorry, can you repeat that once?
Scope and scale
Uh-huh.
of the problem. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, yeah, scoping, as I mentioned, so that is very important because you need to know what you are trying to achieve, right? So for example, as I mentioned, if you take any of them, so for example, Instagram, if you take Instagram, so there are a lot of features where there in Instagram. It can be messaging, or you can create groups, or you can have reels, then you have feed, you can save them, you can share them. So whenever you're designing a system, if you keep thinking, you'll get a lot of features that you can embed into that. And the problem is there is no end. Like you can just keep on increasing or keep on uh, adding features to your system. And the problem is, if you don't scope, you cannot come up with a MVP. So when if you're trying to move fast, so you need to be very precise in what exactly you're going to prioritize and then take up. So this is a practical thing which I mentioned. Like if you're trying to build a product, that's how you take it. Even that stands true for your interviews. So for example, in your interview, you have only 1 hour to prove that you know system design. And if you just keep on adding more requirements, and if you are not able to scope, you don't know what to explain. So that is the reason scoping is very essential. Hmm. And scaling, that's also a great point. Scaling is essential because, as I was mentioning earlier, if you have a infinite scroll or something like uh, Instagram feed where you can just scroll stuff. So are you trying to introduce infinite scroll, or you want user to explicitly click load more, or how do you want to hit pagination? Because you want to your system to scale. So for example, you have thousands of posts on your feed, and if you're trying to introduce thousands of your DOM elements into your system, that is going to just bubble up your browser, and your browser is going to be, or your application is going to be very small. So how you are going to handle that? So are you trying to show all 1,000 at a time, or you just you're going to show 10 at a time and just ask user to, okay, go to next page, see next 10, go to next page, see next 10? Or are you trying to just introduce an infinite scroll, and once the user scrolls, so just have only the elements on your viewport and delete the rest of the DOM, so that your website or the app is very fast? So that is how I think of scale on the front end side. So it's more of how many elements you can handle and how fast you can handle, so that so the attention span of the people is going down, right? So the more we advance, the faster the things have to be. And excuse me. Yeah, my throat is kind of drying out so soon. Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah. And yeah, as I was mentioning, the attention span of people is getting reduced a lot. So for example, if any website takes more than 3 seconds to load, so that turnover, the people staying back, is going to reduce a lot for each half a second going forward. And that not only impacts the uh, customers or the consumers who are there on your application, it also affects your revenues. So that is the reason thinking in scale even on front end is so essential nowadays, due to all the lot of things that are getting rendered on the UI, or how complex they are going to be going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have two more questions in the chat. And I
Yeah.
think Krishna says, where does window responsive design fits into the system design for front end, and how to figure that out?
Hmm. Great question. Yeah. So this essentially comes in the very initial discussions of you designing a system, right? So for example, if you're trying to design a website, so do you want it to be responsive on an app, in a mobile, or a tab, or a different kinds of screens you are seeing? So there are ton of screens with different sizes. Do you want it to be responsive? So I think this would come in the very initial phases of your system design, wherein you are going to see the target audience for your system, and based on that you are going to decide. So if it is primarily a website or a desktop, and you are not worried much about mobile users, so you are going to make it only responsive to the up to maybe tab. But if you are trying to have users also on mobile, and then it introduce new challenges, right? So you want to have your website responsive, and not just website. If it is app, then you need to decide whether it's Android or iOS. So it comes in the design choices or the tech choices you're going to make. And this comes under one of the non-functional requirements also, like uh, when you're thinking it. So there are two types of systems. One is responsive, the other one is adaptive. Adaptive is primarily like you have two different code bases, one for mobile and one for desktop. So those kind of things also work, or responsiveness also works. So it's up to us how we take that. But yeah, this fits in non-functional requirements of a front-end system design, and it comes very early in the discussion. So when we are going through the problem, we'll exactly see that. And I see one more question from Shyam. How long can a front-end system design round go? So primarily it's 1 hour, but sometimes it can extend to 1.5 hours, depends on the company and the person you are interviewing with. But yeah, the normal notion which I have seen is 1 hour. So 1 hour, and this is one exact reason why you need to have a good idea about the problem you are solving, and you need to scope it, because you have only 1 hour, and generally it won't be extended. So you have to prove that you know the skills in that 1 hour. Yeah, Hafsa, do we have any more?
No, I think we can continue. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if you have any follow-up questions or if you have any other questions, just keep posting them. We'll revisit and we'll answer them. So we'll move forward. So we have seen the concepts about system design and front-end system design. We have seen basic HLD and LLD. We'll go through one example just to make ourselves solid with the understanding, and then we'll take up more questions at the end. So the example which I choose is Facebook newsfeed. So it just that the basic, very minimalistic newsfeed which we are going to see. So I'll try to just walk you through a tool which I would like to use. There's a tool called draw.io. So if someone is interested, they can explore. So this is very handy if someone is trying to give a front-end system design around, and all these things make it a lot more easier. So we'll see. So we are trying to design a front-end, not front-end. Oh my God, Facebook newsfeed. And for this, as I mentioned earlier, we need to take care of two things in the requirements. One is functional, and the other one is non-functional. The other one can be non-functional. And let me try to zoom in so that you can see it better. So this is how it looks. In the requirement side, you have two things, functional and non-functional. And functional can be multiple things. It can be adding a post. So you just have to think through what kind of things you need to put in that. So do you want people to add a post? Then for each post, maybe you need to add like, maybe share, maybe comment. And just give me a minute, I'll remove this part. So these are the kind of requirements. Maybe you need to have groups or communities, or maybe you need to introduce pages or DMs. So these kind of things you need to keep in mind when you're designing a complex system. So all this comes under functional. So when I said functional, it's just the features that a user can use. So those are the things that comes under functional. And when we think of non-functional, it's primarily about, so as we talked about, whether that is going to be respon responsive or adaptive, or is it going to be more of uh, how about performance, or how accessible your system is, or it can be a lot of multiple things about the security things and all the stuff around this. So non-functional generally are not direct features you are going to give it to the user, but this enable the users to use your application or the system very efficiently. So these are the things that comes under non-functional. Functional is mainly features. So these both combinedly gives us the requirements. So I'll relate this with the HLD. So if you see, we have a requirements, functional and non-functional. And in functional, the features which we saw, and non-functional is primarily about the things that enable the user to go through the features. Then we need to scope it. For example, if this is my interview, and if I have all these features, and there can be a ton of non-functional features, and if I have to cover them, it would take at least 4 to 5 hours. So if you want to cover them in 1 hour, then you need to scope it. So for example, maybe I don't want to introduce groups, communities, and pages now, or DMs. I want to primarily focus on newsfeed. So that includes adding a post, then like, share, comment, and then uh, once you have this, you need to even think about, okay, you have a post, but does that post can be only images, or do you want text, or do you want also have videos, or is it, can you just put some links in your post? So you have to see these kind of things. So these are the granular things where once you know exactly what is to scope, so these are the things you are going to explore. So we have requirements, then you scoped it. Okay, I want to do only adding a post. And in non-functional, maybe you are just trying to see only, okay, think about accessibility, or maybe you are trying to think only about performance. So these kind of things, once you finalize, okay, I want to take up only this, then you have a very particular or very focused agenda that, okay, I'm going to just look at the newsfeed part about posts and comments. And then in non-functional, I know I'm going to cover performance and accessibility, nothing else. And then get a confirmation from your interviewer that, okay, are these the things which we are trying to cover today? And if yes, then you have a perfect scope that you can do it within 1 hour. So once you have that scope, then you are going to make some tech choices. So something like, so how we are going to, uh, so first one would be the something like what is asked earlier. So is it going to be Angular versus React, or Vue, or am I trying to do only with Vanilla JS? Then if yes, so should I go with CSR or SSR, client side, server side, or should I do a combination of them? Should I consume my APIs using REST or a GraphQL? Why not REST, or why not GraphQL? Why one over the other? So you need to know the differences between both, so that you will be able to make sure that you know why exactly you're choosing one over the other. So for example, you just said, okay, I'll choose GraphQL. Then the next question would be, why GraphQL? Why not REST? Then you should be able to justify your choices. So why not CSR if you choose SSR, or why not Angular when you choose React? So these kind of things make so you need to have a lot of understanding of how systems work, or how these things work, so that you can make a choice. And this is very crucial, not just for interviews, even for your work going forward. People who are with experience of 4 or 5, so they the kind of problems you see, so those are more inclined towards uh, the system rather than the story level. Like once you cross something like 5 years of experience, the expectation would be not to just take up a story and just solve them. It's more of driving the discussions and seeing, okay, why are we making this choice over the other? So that is where this kind of understanding comes very handy, even in real work. And there are a lot of things. So this framework or the kind of rendering or the how we consume API. So these are some parts of that. I'll show you more when I'm showing my example, which I already did. So these are the tech choices we make. And once you have that, you have to have a component architecture. So something like, so you are going to see uh, what kind of components you are going to make. So for example, maybe we need a post component, and that post can also have something like, so I have a post that can have something like an input, and then it can also have something like a button. So this button is primarily to act as a send or a post button, and you will also have something like other buttons, something like or comment or share. So those kind of things you are going to see. So it can be, maybe you need a like button. So what I'm trying to do here is, this post is a composed component. It's a mixture of multiple smaller components. So you have to go as granular as possible so that you know exactly what kind of components you're building. So I have a post that input is granular because you cannot dissect input into more components because it's already a HTML element. Then you have button. So this can be a post button. Then you have another button, which is a like button. Then you have comments. Comments again is the input. So you have to see the kind of structure you are trying to establish. And once you have this ready, then you are going to think of more of, so what kind of data you are going to see, how you are going to consume that. So for example, if you think about post, so post, for each post, maybe you need to have an ID. Then post, maybe you have a post title, and maybe it will have content. Then if you're trying to add images or videos to your post, then you should also have some media. Then comments. So you need to have the comments array so that you know exactly what comments are there for that post. And also you need to know the user ID who posted that, so that you can enable the edit function for that particular user. Or you need to see the likes. It's an array of, again, user IDs, people who already liked it. So these kind of things comes under data model. So you know, you're thinking about post. So for each post you can expect this. Then you can have comment. So something like, I'll also write for comment. So comment also can have something like an ID, then the user ID who posted that, and the content what they posted. And maybe it should also tag to post ID, or you can directly relate this comment ID in a post. So something like this. So these are some things that come under data model. So this is data model. And then we have something called as data API. So data API can be, if I'm using REST, then slash post. So this would return me all the posts, or slash post slash one. So this would return me the details of post one. Or if you want to get users, maybe users, if you want to get one particular user, then one particular user. So you need to have this contract which you sign on the front end side along with the backend, so that you can work on your front end. You know exactly what kind of APIs you're looking at or what kind of data you're looking at, so that you can accordingly make your front end ready. And then once you have these things ready, so that makes up your system. So now I'll show you a complete solution which I already have, because it's going to take a lot of time if I make everything ready. So if you see this, I hope you're able to see it clearly. So this is a system. If you see the functional requirements, so it's mostly three things. One is adding posts, viewing posts, like, comments, share on a post. So this is there can be more functional requirements, but these are the scoped ones. I scoped it so that I have only these particular things. Once I know I'm aiming for only this, then I have subcategories or sub things inside each requirement, something like add post. So is it going to be which media, image, video, audio, link, text? So should you also have formatting text? View posts. So a view post should be able to save, report, edit if you're on a post, then like, comment, share on a post. So these are the functional requirements. Non-functional comes under this, something like, so are you designing only for desktop or also mobile? Whether you're doing for responsive or adaptive, the kind of rendering you're trying to see, whether it's a single page or multi-page application. You also have to think about authentication, authorization, profile management, localization, internationalization. So there are a ton of stuff which you, um, the more you think, the more keeps on coming. So these are the one fine list which I made. So once you have this ready, okay, so you can choose some of the things which, so you need to talk to your interviewer and just see what exactly they are expecting from this non-functional. Once you have these two things ready, then tech choices. If you see here what tech choices I made, what kind of framework I'm looking at, what kind of state management I'm looking at, routing, what kind of folder structure I have, and also am I trying to use a design system, or whether I'm trying to build custom components, REST or GraphQL, what kind of rendering I'm looking at, micro front ends, what kind of build tools you're looking at, are you enabling CI/CD? So all this comes under a tech stack. Once you have them ready, the component design will look like this. So if you keenly observe, I have a dashboard with all the posts. So that corresponds to another component called posts. And dashboard can also have something like add post, which again talks to media component. And posts will have a micro component called post that can also you reuse media. And also it has multiple things like comment, a button to enable comment, share, like, repost. So this kind of structure, and it's very crucial for you to make this kind of structure ready, so that you know the relation between the components and the kind of components you're trying to make. And let me also highlight these things. So if you see here, for each component, I also have something. So this is the data. So you know exactly what data you're going to consume. So for dashboard, I'm going to consume get posts API or get posts function or whatever that gives the list of posts. For submit button, I'm going to consume add post API, or for save endpoint, report endpoint, share endpoint. So with this you have exact idea how your component is going to look like, what are the components you're seeing it, and how they are going to interact with the backend. So once you have this component design ready, then you think of the data. So if you see the data model which I explained, so for each post you can have ton of things, for each user you have more things, and for each comment you can have more things. And once you have this data model ready, you can have a API, something like, okay, I have an endpoint get post, which returns an array of posts, add post, which takes text, media, or tags, and then returns a boolean whether saying yes or no, or true or false if my post is successful. And then you have a like, which again returns. So like, if you see here, it takes post ID. So you might get some doubt whether why we are not consuming a user ID, because user ID, the way I planned it, I'll take it from a session, so I don't have to worry sending that across. So I'll just take the post ID. I'll, for each likes, then I'll tag that user, that particular user ID which I get from session. So similar for post or share. So something like this. So this is a data API, this is a data model, and then this is how my whole system looks like: the requirements, the tech choices, the component design, then the kind of data I'm looking at. So yeah, that is pretty much how I would design front end Facebook news feed if I'm asked in an interview. So yeah, I am open for Q&A.
Oh, yeah. I'm just looking across, and people who are joining us from Zoom, let us know if you have any last minute questions, so that anything that he talked about or anything that you want to know more about. So, yeah. We have one question, Kiran. So that says, how would we know the scalability, performance, and resources required for front-end system design?
Okay. Yes. I think I answered some of them, like scalability part. So it also, again, everything depends on your system. If it is a very small one where you're trying to see if you're going to get small traffic, or if you're going to get, you have very less moving parts on the front end, or you're just trying to render only 10 posts and you have this pagination part. So mostly you won't face the problem of having uh, the issue with, so if you are scalability, again, it comes with the more users you are who are trying to use your system, or the kind of data you have on your UI. So that's where you think of scalability. And performance, I think both go hand in hand. So performance, again, uh, yeah, as I mentioned, it mainly depends on what you're trying to put it on the UI. I'll just put it this way, uh, because as I mentioned, if you're trying to design an Instagram or Facebook and you have thousands of posts, then it is very crucial for you to think of performance. You cannot just keep putting all the elements or all the posts into the DOM, and just you cannot bombard that with all the posts. So at some point you start seeing your website or the app is so slow. So you have to go back and think, okay, so this became slow. You want to make it fast. So what exactly is eating up your memory or eating up your speed? And then you need to figure out, okay, so these are the things that eating up. Then maybe just make an infinite scroll and just remove all the things that are not required, not in the viewport, and just have only 5 to 10 elements on the viewport. So there is one thing called as React virtualized. If someone is interested, just explore that. So that tries to address exactly this uh, shortcoming. Like if you introduce the infinite scroll and you have 1,000 items, if you just introduce that infinite scroll, and if you just scroll till the end, and if you check your DOM, you'll be surprised there will be 1,000 elements hanging there. And at a time you're going to see only 10, but you have 1,000 there, which is going to eat up all your space, and maybe you are going to crash your browser. So if you don't want to get into that trouble, or if you don't want your users to get into that trouble, so we do something like React virtualized, wherein that library automatically deletes the ones which are not in the viewport, and or it reuses that DOM elements, so that you at a time you're going to see only finite number of posts, and you have only finite number of posts in your DOM. And then uh, the library is going to reuse the same number of DOM elements. So if you are trying to render only 10, so how much ever you scroll, if you recheck your DOM element, there will be only 10. So that's how you're going to scale your systems, or make your systems more performant. There are a lot of things you can also take care when you're trying to do performance, like reducing the bundle size, for example. That is one primary things why websites are very slow. Like you are trying to download your JS or execute the JS, which is very large, or if you're trying to download images in a raw format, which is like 10 MB or 12 MB. So that is going to eat up all your space. Instead, you need to compress them and then feed our Instagram. You should definitely think about compressing your media. Then also using something like React virtualized to limit the number of DOM elements, and thinking about infinite scroll and multiple things. So that is how you need to think of how you can scale your system, or how you can make your system more performant.
Yeah, I think we have one last question. And it says, should we also write workable code in system design interviews, or will it be a separate round?
Yeah, good question. So when the round is system design, it's primarily expects you to design the system more than doing it. There are some rounds where they say maybe something like browser coding or something. At that point, so so I'll put it this way. So if you want to design a system on a whole, if it is a HLD, you won't write any code. So the tool which I showed, draw.io, you will use something like that. If not that, maybe you'll use InVision or Figma or something like that. and you try to just design a system and present that. If it is something like design auto suggestions component or design a star rating widget, there the question is very limited. Like you have to design a star rating widget, then you are going to design only that in that time. So for that type of questions, you are going to uh, explain how you are going to achieve. Then also you have to achieve it because you have ton of time. So you can explain your approach in 5 to 10 minutes. So you are left with 50 minutes, right? So you have to utilize that for coding. And it is expected that you code and show the output in such rounds. But if it is whole as a system, yeah, you don't have to worry about writing code. It just designing and explaining the stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the last question for this webinar, Kiran. And let me know if you have any last minute question, guys, or else we are actually going to wrap up. And I'm just going to have a quick check everywhere if you have any questions left.
Yep.
Until then, if you want to ask, please do not miss on asking the questions. Yeah. So that's pretty much. And well, that brings us to the end of this wonderful session, guys. And I would like to thank each one of you for joining us. Thank you for taking your time on the weekend. Thank you for being on time, and thank you for sticking with us till the end. And it means a lot, and that really shows how passionate that you are with your learnings. And we would love to embrace this part of you by getting amazing speakers like Kiran on our next webinars too. And let me know if you need any advanced version of the system design with Kiran. We would love to bring him again on board. And hope you learned something new from this today's session. We will look forward for your post on LinkedIn along with your key learnings. And don't forget to tag Recro, tag Kiran, and tag me in your post. And also, thank you so much, Kiran, for joining us. It was awesome having you. Thank you for taking out time from your hectic schedule and sharing such insightful information.
Yep. The pleasure is mine.
Yeah. So before we end the session, I have a few announcements to make, guys. So we have created a community for developers called the Rebase on Discord. And if you're a developer with 1+ years of experience, then you can get a chance to connect with fellow developers and get career opportunities. And we have a lot of things that's happening in the Rebase, so do come and check it out. I think the link of the Discord is in the chat, and I'm going to drop that again. You can join and then say hi to the people over there, connect with the experts, and we have a lot of mentoring sessions for exclusively for community members, and you can be a part of that. And there are a lot more other opportunities that you can unveil for yourself. So we have made a LinkedIn post about this session to comment your learnings and give us your learnings and key takeaways from the session. If you have more questions, do follow Kiran on LinkedIn, and he talks a lot about front-end system design. He gives a lot meetup talks around Hyderabad. If you're someone from Hyderabad, you can just go attend his meetup, and he regularly has a speaker in meetups and all of that. So you can go connect with him and meet him personally if you want. And for more such, if you're exploring career opportunities, Recro is hiring passionate developers. Do check out current openings at Recro. You can go to Recro's page, and you can go to recro/career.io, where if you or your friend or any of your colleagues is looking for a change, we'll make sure that we'll place you in the great startups of the country. To stay updated for such events, follow us on social media. And the recording of the session will be out. But till then, you can go ahead and rewatch the live recording that we already have on our YouTube channel and also on LinkedIn. So if you missed out any part of the webinar, or if you want to share it with your friends or any of your colleagues, we do have the live recording. So please go ahead and share it with them. So that's all for this session, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope to see you in the next session. Take care, stay safe, and thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kiran.